Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and continuing with our series of discussions with the City Council, we have with us this evening the City Councilor from Ward 1, Todd Rotondo. Welcome, Todd.
Good evening, Mr. Binns.
Well, that's very formal.
I know. Listen, you deserve the respect.
Well, someday I'll tell you my story about being called Mr. That's another thing. But anyway, City Council seems to be a lot different this time around. A lot of public meetings on lots of different subjects. In fact, before the show you were talking about there's 3 more coming up in the very near future for National Grid, I think it was, and the city charter, and I forget what
Bass River Overlay District is the other one.
The magic one, yeah. That one's dragging a lot of interest. And in fact, I watched the show, and ladies and gentlemen, you ought to go on BevCam and Google or search for the various shows and find out what's going on. They're a little long, but there's a lot of people saying a lot of good things that ought to be considered. And in fact, before getting ready for this one, I watched the Ryal Side show again. And towards the end, there was a gentleman got up, and I couldn't catch his name, but he went on for some time talking about some of the issues of if we buy into this overlay district, it's going to be more density, there's going to be traffic involved, and we need to come up with, the city, the residents, the taxpayers, need to come up with our idea of where's Beverly going and how we're going to get there. So what are you hearing?
So the gentleman you're referring to is Steve Bissell, which
Okay.
he's been very vocal. And so that meeting at EARS was very informational. We've had 2 of them since. The first one really had raw emotions. It was the very beginning. People were really concerned that the project seemed to be, or the overlay district seemed to be moving too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, we had the second meeting, which was in response to a lot of the questions that were asked in the first one. And then Ward 2 had their own meeting, which seemed to answer some of those first meeting questions. What I'm hearing from a lot of the residents right now is in fact density, traffic, overpopulation. When is enough? And, it's funny, when I'm speaking to residents and they ask me, well, Todd, when is enough development in the city? And it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
If you ask someone if we have too much traffic in the city, then we've already surpassed our development, if you want to look in that aspect.
Yeah.
Because we're seeing more traffic. But part of the traffic issues is not necessarily all of the building. It's also all of the National Grid doing, road work. And, we are the generation that's inheriting the original infrastructure that was built. And it's, we don't want to have an explosion like there was up in Lawrence and Andover. So we're getting these new pipes, which is creating a lot of detours. There is more cars on the road. Make no mistake about that. So in that aspect, yes, we have too much. Now, if you look at the whole aspect of, do we have enough housing? Well, no. If you want to look at that, the state shows and proves. I mean, we as a city have definitely done our part and share of creating a lot of housing compared to, say, a Hamilton, a Wenham, or even a Danvers. Salem seems to be keeping up with it. But you would think, basic economics. I mean, I've been in business for 30 years in supply and demand.
Yeah.
The supply is up, demand goes down, which hence the price comes down. Well, we're seeing rents continually go up. So the reality is I don't know if Beverly would be able to create enough housing to get that demand and that supply to where it needs to be to get the pricing down. We have conversations that even when we say affordable housing, immediately in my head originally, I think affordable housing is those, 1-bedroom apartments that were $900 and 2 bedrooms that may have been $1,200. Those days are gone, unfortunately. And we're seeing affordable housing now, units are $1,800, $1,700, $2,000. And, I have a 24-year-old daughter and she's still living at home and because she can't find anything affordable right now. And there's a lot of people in that, that are in that situation where our kids are staying home later in life because they're just not able to get out and afford what's out there. The cost of living's is not keeping up with it. Our inflation's gone up considerably. So I guess it's depending on who you talk to and how you want to look at it, whether we have too much housing right now. So, and we see the traffic is, it took me 13 minutes to get from my house on Kernwood to my restaurant on Cabot Street because of detours and National Grid, and there was, the project being done at the Depot Square too. So the detours took a long time, and then there was more traffic on Rantoul Street. So it's definitely a concern, and the way these buildings are going to look like. How high are they going to be? Are they going to be 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories? Are we going to have another Rantoul Street? Rantoul Street looks great compared to what it was, but there are people who still look at it, whether you agree or not with them. It's that canyon effect. I don't know if it was really the same canyon effect that you would get in New York City, but there is now definitely a wall of buildings when you go down to the lower half of Rantoul Street heading into Salem. So that's where a lot of the other concerns are right now. People want to have open space. They want to have that walkable part of the back end of the river. So there's those 4 major concerns right there. How's it going to be on our resources, the traffic, the density, and as well as the aesthetics of it.
Yeah. So again, it comes down to what's your idea of the city, and I think everybody's got a different idea, and they don't all agree. And this whole concept of, well, what do you really want it to do, played out a little while ago with the dust up they had at Pete's Park, where the high school kids decided, hey, we'll have a league, 3-on-3 league. It's fine. And it sounded like a good idea until they decided, well, you don't have a permit. And I talked to some of the people that live around the area, and what's the concern? Well, there's noise, there's traffic, and it's supposed to be a park for toddlers. Well, I quickly retorted with, yeah, but if it's a park for toddlers, why do you have a basketball net at 10 feet? So I think part of the situation is we put together these different projects, and we're trying to be all things for everybody. And all of a sudden, when that happens, we end up with these conflicts. So I think it's good that the City Council is getting involved in these things and trying to sort it out. But I guess the question is, at what point do we step back and say, now, wait a minute, we can't do everything every place. We have to narrow it down, focus on what we really need to get done. So I guess the question comes back to, what do we really want to do with the overlay district on the Bass River?
So interestingly enough, we know for the last 20 years it's been discussed since the original master plan of 2002.
Yeah.
I've lived in the city since 95, and we've heard about being developed. So fast forwarded in 2017, there's a reconsideration to start relooking over the overlay district on the Bass River overlay. And they've had several studies. Mayor Cahill did several studies along the Bass River overlay. He's done the harbor and the waterfront studies. The new master plan was coming up. So 2017, there's a pause on the Bass River overlay, and that was really in response to what was happening on Rantoul Street with all the building and the heights and people really up in arms. And we saw them get organized and really direct how the Depot Square 2 had been changed, and how modified and everything like that to response of the neighbors' concerns. So the mayor put a pause onto it. We did the 2020 master plan, and there was a lot of participation in that. So now all of a sudden we're at a point that we're going to start revisiting the Bass River Overlay District. So now, in my opinion, and I can't speak for the mayor or his planning department, this has been something that's been talked about for 20 years.
Yeah.
You and I have been involved, but we have seen, and I can speak specifically to Ryal Side, that I have seen such a turnover in population of new young families moving in. So all of a sudden, all these new families have been turning over in the last 5 years. They're hearing about this overlay district, and to them it's brand new. This is something that has not been discussed. They're not aware of it. So now all of a sudden the mayor comes up with this proposal of something that they've been working on for the last 5 years, 10, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we're ready to really move forward, and we're hoping to get something in front of the council by the spring. Well, these new neighbors, these new families that moved into Ryal Side especially, like, whoa, time out. what are you talking about? Like, why are we fast tracking this project? There's such major change that it's going to create a new neighborhood that's going to create extensive traffic on Bridge Street and on Alley Street, which is also a concern is, will these streets be able to satisfy the excessive flow of new traffic coming in? So now do we need a traffic study? So the mayor heard that, and that was at the first meeting. Why are we rushing this so quickly? Mm-hmm. Well, to the mayor and the planning department, it hasn't been something that's been rushed. It's been discussed for 20 years, for the last 5 years. But to the new neighbors that are in the neighborhood, and even some of the older neighbors who may just never have paid attention because it wasn't a concern yet, now it seems as if it's being fast-tracked. And to the mayor's credit, and to the Ryal Side Civic Association, the Ward 2 Association, the neighbors within the Ward 2 and Ryal Side, getting organized, getting together, and creating these committees and really bringing questions and coming in a cordial manner and really having done their homework, gave the mayor time to pause and think and say, okay, I'm hearing you. So the mayor did put a stop on it. And instead of this company that the city hired and presented what could appear between 700 and 1,400 units, the mayor came back and says, okay, well, let's remove National Grid off of consideration for the Bass River Overlay District. That's about 40% of that. So we know the number's going to come down considerably. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden he's listening to the people and he hears about the traffic. So let's do a theoretical traffic study, because a traffic study can only really be done when a project is placed in front and they know what they're looking for certain intersections. So the planning department is going to work on doing that. Let's hear more of what the concerns are. Is 5 stories too much? We definitely don't want 6 stories, but was 5 stories too much? Is 4 stories? What's the right amount? Is it 25 feet? Is it 50 feet of open space that we want? So the mayor has paused and listened to it, and even to his credit, he has, and as you said, you saw the meeting, is at the very earliest the fall. Yeah. And right now, as the councilors, including myself, we're all doing our work to make sure we're listening to the constituents and hearing them and bringing our concerns to these meetings and making sure that the people are made aware. So there is definitely a pause. They're definitely being heard by the mayor's administration right now. So the direction that we're going in, that's debatable. I mean, people like, we know there may be affordability, and the mayor's looking to maybe increase the affordability from 12% to 15%. But again, affordable in definition is $2,000, $2,300. The median household in Beverly is $100,000, which that's a high income.
One of the things surprised me when they said, we're not just counting the income in Beverly alone, it's the whole district from
Metro Boston
on up. And it's now the median income's $101,000 for a family of 4. And the thing I get concerned about is, well, that's nice, except there are a lot of people that work in Beverly that aren't dragging down $100,000 a year.
100% correct. And that's the thing. That's the federal government that sets that standard for us.
Well, they set the standard as that, but at the same time, I've had Andrew Defenza on the show a couple of times, and he talks about, well, you've got this federal definition of affordable housing, some percentage of the median income. Fine. Well, then you got housing that is affordable, which is the ballpark he plays in. It's different. And you start to think about, you're part of the vibrant community that everybody talks about for making downtown Beverly attractive. And we've had Paul Guanci having this discussion too. And the people who work in that industry are not dragging down $100,000 a year. And my question always has been, okay, they work in Beverly, where do they live? And I don't know about your shop, but Paul has mentioned that he's got people coming in from New Hampshire to work in the super shop. And it's nice that they travel that far every day. I dreaded just driving to Lynn every day, and that's only 10 miles. So this is an issue I think that totally gets lost in the shuffle. And the other one I think gets lost in the shuffle is, okay, somebody in Boston moves into one of the apartments, commutes back and forth, and after a while they get married and decide we're going to have a family. Okay, we like the town. Where can we live? like you say, the housing isn't there. So treating this thing as a single entity and not considering, well, what happens next, I think is where I get a little concerned that it hasn't been thought through yet. So, again, it comes down to the question of what kind of a city do we want? Is it just going to be a bedroom city for Boston, or is it going to be a community like everybody remembers the good old days?
You know, it's funny for me, and I say this, is Beverly is a city with a small town feeling that doesn't want to become Salem. That's how I kind of identify it. I talk to people who just move in from the city. I'm going to town hall, or they're referring to it still as a town.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been a town in how many years, right?
Yeah,
But still we have that, as you said, a bedroom community feeling. We have that close-knit community feeling in the city. And, you know, Beverly is interesting. It's almost like that transitional city where you have Salem and Lynn to one section, and then the other side you have Danvers, Hamilton, Wenham, and Manchester by the sea. So you have all these towns on one side, you have all the cities on the other side, and we're in the smack dab in the middle.
Yeah.
And yet we have this train station that is a major hub for all of the North Shore, or Cape Ann. I mean, you look and it branches off to two directions, Rockport and Newburyport. And so Beverly, you know, again, it's that small town feeling, but we're really, I mean, look, we have an airport, we have a harbor management. You know, we have pretty much the same amenities that Boston has if you really look at it. But we don't want to lose that feeling of that small town feeling still, and we are starting to get away from that where we need to create more housing. I mean, again, as I said, I have a 24-year-old daughter who has saved her money, who has done the first-time home buyers course. She is pre-qualified, but there's no stock out there to buy, first of all, and if it is, it's overpriced, overbid, and unaffordable. And that's just, even if she's looking to stay within the area, I mean, the closest she could stay to become affordable is sort of the Groveland, get up to the New Hampshire area. And it's just not attainable. And she's a teacher over in Salem. So she works at a teacher's salary. It's not a terrible salary, provided that she's by herself living at home with her parents. But her to go off on her own, she couldn't afford it. She would be one of those people who would qualify for the affordable income. But again, a rental and affordable housing is more than what my mortgage is. And most people's mortgages could get at that point of what a rent is. So it's a tough question to answer directly because there is no real answer to it. It's a matter of, do we want to keep the people who are living, our children, our grandchildren, to stay here? And how do we create enough housing that would bring the rents down, which that's the market dictates that. But in the same processes, we don't want to have too many high-rise buildings. We don't want to have too many, all these cars and traffic that's going to be created. Even though the mayor's trying to create a TOD, the transit-oriented development, and hopefully at some point in time, people will be taking the train and there'll be only one car, or maybe no cars at all. Maybe some of the younger generations, they're not getting their licenses right away. They're getting them later in life. They're taking Zip cars. They're taking rideshare. I've always, but in the same breath as you still need a car to go get your groceries. Unless you're going to do, the Peapods or something like that. But, it's still, we're not that community where you used to go down the street and go shopping for your bakery goods or your fish, this fish market was there, all these little markets. It's supermarkets now that are available. The malls are the interstate. So the interstate tends to pull the traffic that you need a car to get to in order, we don't have a place in the city where you can buy all these types of clothing, say underwear or socks, you have to go to the mall to get it or a shopping center. So we still need our cars. But again, we still want to still remain that town-like feeling. And it is a desirable place. The school systems are great. We have, like I said, you have 5 exits. You have 4 train stops. You have a waterfront. You do have you want to have a little more liveliness. You go over to Salem, you're close enough there. So I could truly tell you, I don't have an answer unless, for me, I like the feel of that small town feeling. I like Ryal Side, the community that I'm in. It's still that small neighborhood where you help each other out. We're really still a close-knit part of the city. but yet we see buildings coming up. I mean, I've talked to residents in Ryal Side, and the project that they see that to them is more, of an appetite of is the old metal hydride over on Congress Street, the Sedna projects. Open space, they're not terribly high, they're 3.5 stories, some of them are 3 stories, there's a beautiful walkway along it. We saw what that was looking like. We knew that was a super fun area. That was a huge contaminated site, yet we have these beautiful units there. Could something like that go along the waterfront? People want another park put it down there. Well, we can ask for the developers to create the open space. Can the city, we don't have enough staff as it is within the city in all our departments. So to create another park is great, but then how do we maintain it? Whereas if we can have the developer maintain the park, specifically the bowler mat, which we know has been sold, is with their idea of buying this piece of property without the zoning putting in place yet. So they're taking a leap of faith that it hopefully will get done. But it's that boat ramp there, so we don't want to lose that space either. So I can't give you an answer to say one way or another what people are feeling. I've had people say, we want a bunch of housing there. We want to make sure that we can satisfy what we need here, which you don't hear those voices. For me, I hear the concerns, but then after the meeting the other night, last week, I did have people come up, listen, we were going to speak, but we just were afraid to. We are in favor of more housing. So there are people out there that just maybe aren't as vocal. So it's definitely heavy loaded right now where people are more concerned about the overbuilding or what they feel would be overbuilding.
Yeah. Well, that keeps coming back to the comment that several ladies made during the meeting you were at, that you hosted, when is enough enough? And I think trying to define that is very, very difficult. Because I look at it, I got the same situation. I've got my granddaughter still living with me. She graduated from college and got her teacher's degree, got her master's and everything else. Same situation. And at the same time, another grandson and his wife live in New Jersey. They work in Manhattan. And they're in a similar situation to Beverly, that they're in a town very close to the New York. They commute back and forth on the train. But now they're getting to the point of they've got a son. I got a great-grandson, no less. Makes me older than dirt. But now they're saying, well, we're to the point we need a backyard. We want a backyard. We like the idea of having the car in the driveway. Because right now, the car is parked in the garage 3 blocks away. It's walkable distance. But if they want to go anywhere, the first thing they have to do is check the neighborhood. So look out on the street, there's 2 open spaces. Then it's all right to go get the car and come back, because one of those spaces will still be left. Now you can load the car up with all the goodies and go. So I can see this happening over and over again. It's not unique. And we build all these condos or apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom at most, mostly 1 bedroom and studios. But sooner or later, there's going to be this urge to, I want a backyard. I want to put the car in the driveway. And I just don't see that part of the equation being worked. It's all, okay, we'll just do Bass River. That's nice. Well, what about, as you mentioned earlier, where do you go shopping? Within walking distance. It isn't there. You want to go to the pharmacy. Well, the nearest one from there is CVS up on Rantoul Street, and Walgreens is shutting down, I've heard. So we're down to 1. The local amenities just aren't there. So it's not a complete city. It's just bits and pieces. And I think that's my concern, that, we can talk about the overlay and do something there, but what about the rest of the city? What about the rest of the infrastructure you need, like a daycare center? I don't hear this being considered. That's what bothers me.
So my opinion and thought, my ideal thing on the overlay district would be senior affordable housing, because our generation is aging out to a point where they need to downsize, which would conversely would move those so that the empty nesters would move into a place like a
Yeah.
Brooksby, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a great model right there. And I know that Harbor Lights collaborating with the middle school, the Bristol Middle School, to create exactly what that is.
Yeah.
We don't have enough already. So, if ideally a developer came in and could find a model and work it down there, that would be perfect, in my opinion, obviously. Which then is, we see people moving out of their single-family homes, and then those families could move into. So
Yeah.
it's almost that cycle that would happen. I have in-laws who are at their age right now that they considered moving into Brooksby, and it would have been prime for them because it would have freed up their house. They would have been into, still independent living, but they don't need all that space anymore.
Yeah.
Where there's that family wants to get started, they want 2 kids, 1 kid, whatever the case, they want that backyard, the pool. So now what's happening is the people who are able to get out and hopefully find some sort of affordable senior living, they move out of their single family homes, they move into those apartments, then those families move into there, who may have been living down on Rantoul Street. And we're seeing some of the, younger people, the people my daughter's age, who are, just dating, or they're starting to, maybe get married, and they are starting to look to, start a family. Maybe the first few years they're going to stay in that apartment, but then eventually they're going to look. We've all gone through that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we've all been a little younger when we did it. I was 22 when I was, moving into my first, the house that I'm still into with my wife. I just think the generation now is a little older getting into that because of the affordability part.
Yeah. So I think the question needs to be thrashed at a lot longer. I think it's a good idea that the mayor is delaying making a presentation to the city council until it gets sorted out. And at the same time, I think we get to the point of these town hall meetings. You can't call them city hall meetings.
No, it doesn't sound as good. It doesn't sound as
sound
good.
right. Yeah, so these town hall meetings, I think, are really important, that people ought to come out and just screw up your courage and get in behind the microphone and say what you want to say and get it out. And I think that's what needs to be done. And ladies and gentlemen, we've had a half hour of fun, and I would strongly recommend you go on BevCam, search for these town hall meetings, see what they're saying. BevCam is going to probably record the 3 meetings we talked about earlier. So they're, I guess the magic words, they're hybrid meetings now.
Yes.
And hey, find out what's going on in town and get hold of your representative. Guys like Todd, they're very, very reasonable to talk to, and they listen. And get the message out. And thanks again for watching, and we'll probably do some more of these.